examples for the reimbursement process. I did just now start this piece, so if anybody has questions and they want to jump back in to go ahead and look at these examples and what we talk about, that would be wonderful. All right, share. I should be sharing an Adobe PDF with you. And the very first one that we are going to look at is actually our basic example. So this is very straightforward, best case scenario. This is what the grantee went ahead and submitted. And then just as a little caveat, I did remove all identifying information. So you shouldn't be able to identify the grantee, the college, or the dual trainee on any of these documents that were sent to you. But these are real examples, and hopefully that'll be a bit more tangible for you going forward. Okay, this is what I was talking about earlier. Do you see on the top of here, we have kind of a bill. So it talks about all the breakdown of costs. And then below, we have a course schedule. This is like best case scenario. This is absolutely perfect to see because we can go ahead and we can look at all the charges that they have, and then their 3 courses are listed here. And what we want to do is when I'm looking at this, I'm comparing it directly with their invoice. And this is where I'm going to actually have to change how I'm sharing because I want to be able to flip between the invoice and that PDF quickly. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to share my screen instead. I should be able to pull up those invoices. Perfect. Okay, so here's that basic invoice that they went ahead and submitted. So they just told me on here, dual trainee A had these 3 courses. They had a reading course, biology course, and an English course. And the charges were $2,792.50. This specific grantee does not have a contribution that they need to do, and that's because they are under a gross revenue of $25 million a year. And so they are requesting from the grant to reimburse them for the full $2,792.50. It is wonderful when you can actually list all the courses in here. I know once in a while when we have a grantee with a lot of dual trainees, they'll end up saying fall term courses, fees, books. Like they'll just be very broad with that. It's great though when you can actually list them all in here individually, but I'll accept both of them. All right, and look, that matches. Perfect. I know the charges are exactly here. One great thing also about this specific style of a bill and schedule is up here, this payment received, and you can see they paid the full amount. This particular one doesn't tell me who paid it, so that's not as helpful. But usually if it goes through third-party billing, it'll say third-party, it'll have the amount. So then I know that the employer is actually who paid for it. And then right here is actually my proof of payment and my bill and my schedule, and everything is right there. For this one, we'll need a little additional information just because I don't know who paid it. It could have been the dual trainee or it could have been the actual grantee. So we'll go down. Maybe bring this out a little bit. So you can see on here is the actual payment on the account. And I can see exactly how much it was. I can see that it was processed for the student's name. And then it was actually given to the college. And then right here, and I changed it, of course, but I can see who paid for it. And in this particular situation, the actual grantee paid for it. And that's how I can confirm. And right here, I have an email from the grantee's email inbox showing their receipt that they actually went ahead and paid. This is 3 pages. And so you add that invoice document, it's a total of 4 pages. And that is all I need. For this specific dual trainee, all I need is to see the trainee's bill, their courses, making sure they're lined up with that work plan and budget, how that payment was done, and we're done. That is how simple this process can be. Now, if you have 20 dual trainees, then we would go ahead and, times that by 20 because we'd want to bill for everyone. But then usually the payment piece is still all done at the same time. Questions about that basic example?
I do have one question, Jacqueline.
Yes.
How early can this be submitted?
Yes. As soon as possible. So as long as your contract's on file and your trainee has started, you can do it right away.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, usually most grantees, their trainee is at least started. They've like done a class or started a class, and then we'll do the billing. Other ones, once in a great while, in IT, they'll ask for payment up front, and we are okay with doing that as long as it's within a reasonable time. You don't want to pay for something that's like in 6 months, because usually those dual trainees move things around. But as soon as you pay your training provider, as soon as that check is sent off to that college, let's start this process. We'll get you paid right away.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. That's a good question. We definitely are committed to our grantees to make sure they're not holding up funds. And we know that even right now, it can be very financially difficult with those training funds. And so we want to make sure we get reimbursed as quickly as possible. Okay, let's go to call this one more complex, just because we have a little bit more documentation on it, but I did just work with one dual trainee. When you start to add, the more dual trainees you have, ultimately the more complex these become. But this is our next grantee. So they went ahead and submitted for dual trainee B. They have more classes. They all appear to be healthcare services related. They do have 2 additional charges you're going to see on here. You'll see that they have books and they have a stethoscope. And so we see those additional charges. Also, this grantee is required to have a 25% match. When you're doing the 25% match, you're going to go ahead, you'll take the total charges, and you're going to times it by 25% and do normal rounding. So, if there's a 5, you're rounding up. If it's a 4, you're rounding down. Do the normal rounding on here, and then you're going to just do the total charges minus that contribution should go ahead and be that grant reimbursement. We do have a column in here. This is a good time to mention it for the trainee contribution. This really comes into play with those programs that are just a lot more expensive. It might be a bachelor's program for engineering, let's say. And so your actual trainee might be contributing some cost to their education. And we do want to see that breakdown only because we keep track of it to let the Minnesota legislature know about how much our trainees actually have to pay. And that should calculate everything. So even if your trainee does get Minnesota State grant or federal Pell grant, so other financial aid resources, we still want to know about how much your trainee is paying out of pocket or with their other resources in this spreadsheet. Again, that's really rare. Most of the time, the employer and this grant help cover those costs. So if you have questions about that breakdown, I'll help you through it. I usually will help adjust or kind of go back and forth with questions with the grantee if I think that there should be some charges on there. All right. So here's the more complex example, and it looks different. This is a completely different training provider, so the information is going to look different. This very first one is I'll close this part. Okay, is their actual schedule. So I can see it's dual trainee B. I forgot to mention this earlier, and I hope this pops up when I click on the comment. I hope you can see it as well. When I'm going through these documents, especially for the academic program, but for all of them, I make sure and I double check to make sure there is a participation agreement on file. So that's their dual training grant form that they went online and filled out within a minute. And I make sure they have a current FAFSA application on file. So I do double check it at this time. I do my best to check for FAFSAs during the contract period. But if at that time somebody doesn't have a FAFSA, I just mark it as they don't have it. I go ahead, I let you know they don't have it, and then I give them some time to do it. But then at this point, if they still do not have it, I have to go back to you. They need to file it. I have to see in my system they filed it before I can reimburse you. This is very rare. Most dual trainees are great at making sure their FAFSA is on file. Grantees follow up with them once in a great while it happens. So just know if it does, it will delay the reimbursement process. All right. Well, these courses, they go ahead and they match up with exactly what is on that invoice to us. And I can see that it's the $2,196.50. Right. And then this is actually the specific invoice that the training provider went ahead and sent over to the grantee. And like I had said, most of the time you'll just go ahead and see spring, program, and then the amounts on there. And this is fine because that first document had the whole schedule on it. All right, this is the next document. So this is actually with books. One thing that is really great about this invoice is that it was done directly from the school. So this is actually the college's bookstore. It's going to the grantee's account directly, and it lists out those books. With books, when they are purchased, billed, and everything is done through a college or training provider, I am under the assumption that the training provider knows about the dual training grant and what can and cannot be reimbursed. I'm under the assumption that you're checking everything over to make sure that the charges are cleared. And therefore, when they are done, I don't need additional documentation. I just need to see how much they cost. So all I really need to see is that it's $237.59. I don't need additional documents to say, okay, that law and ethics for health professionals book, that I need the syllabus now. I need to make sure that instructor actually required it. I don't need that because the college has actually done all the billing and worked with the grantee directly. And then this part actually shows me that the grantee went ahead and paid for the tuition and for those books. And this is like a check, and they went ahead and I highlighted how much it all equals. So the $3,225.23, all of it. This top charge was for a different bill, but the two are right on there that I need to be. And then there was a copy of the check, but I deleted a lot of it. Not sure if you can see it very well, but there was a copy of the check on the bottom. Okay, zoom out a little bit. All right, this is for that stethoscope. So that's that third part. So we did tuition, we did books, now the stethoscope. This is purchased on Amazon. It's very common to have outside training providers, especially for healthcare. And it was a total of $91.37, which matches the invoice we looked at. And I can see that there's a stethoscope on here. It's got some information about it. I can see it was shipped directly to the trainee. That the trainee actually paid for it. So now I know the trainee went out to an outside place, purchased their materials, they paid for everything, it got sent to them. And then I need to make sure it's required. So this document is actually from the college, and this document goes over the whole program requirements. And you can see on here it says the second term, that there is a stethoscope, and the word required is right next to it, and the cost is varied. If I ever have a question about the cost and being reasonable or those kinds of things, I'll ask you. But most of the time, as long as it falls, close into what the training provider is saying, it's not a problem. And this one actually says varied, so it could be a lot of different prices. And then, because the trainee paid for this, I actually need to see that you, as the grantee, reimbursed your trainee so that you actually got the money out to them. And this is a copy of the check that was actually sent for the exact amount of that stethoscope to the trainee to reimburse them for their purchase. So quickly over this one that's just slightly more complex, we have a schedule. We actually have the invoice from the training provider to the grantee. We have a second invoice from the training provider to the grantee that's only for the books. We have a copy of the check that was sent to the training provider for the books and for that tuition invoice. We have a copy of the original receipt of the required material, which was a stethoscope. We have a document from the training provider saying that during the second term, a stethoscope is required for this program. And we have a copy of the check that the grantee sent to their dual trainee, reimbursing them for their stethoscope, which was a required material. Any questions about this more complex scenario that does have those additional types of charges on it? Okay, so what I want to show you next is two documents I work with internally when I'm looking through your invoices. You could use these, modify them however you'd like to modify them. I'm going to kind of back it out a little bit. The first one is an Excel spreadsheet that I use as a checklist just to make sure you've got everything you need to have on there. So I start out with, are the students that you've listed on this invoice, are they on the work plan budget? Well, that makes sense. Okay, yes, everybody's on that work plan and budget. Then I can skip over to question 3. Are the classes that are on the invoice actually on that work plan and budget? So that's where I look at your related instruction tab on your work plan and I match it all up with your invoices and the schedule. Yep, everything's on there. Good. So then we can move forward to step 5. Is there an employer match required? So with the first one, there was not, but the second one there was. So we could say, yes, there was an employer match on that second one. Did the grantee actually show the division of what's being charged? So really, we just want to be able to see that that 25% is on there. Now, and it was. Did the grantee provide evidence that it was paid in full? So that's the copy of those checks. The check to the training provider and a check to the dual trainee, yes. Has the training provider signed an agreement? This is done at the time of the application, but I always want to double check, make sure we have everything on file to make sure the training agreement is all set up. Has the student or employee on the invoice submitted all their documentation? This is really that online participation agreement. Yep, that employee or that dual trainee definitely did. This particular one is attending a Pell eligible school and they have submitted a FAFSA. So I make sure I look that all over and I do it on my checklist. And then you need to make sure that the amount is not exceeded for what's available. So when we get close to $6,000 maximum per dual trainee, I really need to make sure that we're not going over it. And so then I also have it on my checklist. And then as always, need to make sure that contract was executed. And then just as a reminder, were there any amendments? Did we change any of the amounts or whatnot? So we need to make sure, and there usually isn't amendments, but once in a while we have them. And as long as everything lights green, then we're good to go. If it will to light up red, it'll actually say stop on here. And then we need to go back and make sure we have all of those items. So I use this to make sure I'm monitoring your invoices accurately. And then what I also use, and you're welcome to use this as well. So I use a reimbursement worksheet. I go ahead, I put you in as the grantee, I list the provider, and I create multiple tabs along this document for each payment request. So payment 1, 2, 3, as we go throughout the year. And I have all of your dual trainees listed on the first column, and then I have the training providers, and sometimes they're different. And I create a budget. So we'll say it's a $6,000 budget, and they're starting out with $6,000, and they're requesting $2,500 for this time. Then I'm able to actually see what the ending balance is and to keep track to make sure we're staying within those means. I also use it to go ahead and I sum up the columns, make sure that everything is actually adding up to what your invoice says and what you're requesting for reimbursement. Those are the two documents that really help me go through the invoicing process. Do you have any questions about those two internal documents that we use? All right. Well, we are at that point. We have exactly 10 minutes left, so I can answer any type of questions you have. Well, I'm glad there's no questions. I'm glad it was enough.
Hey, Jacqueline, it's Megan.
Yeah.
Just because I know this has come up in the past, do you want to just briefly talk about the things that you don't need in an invoice request? So I know we've received entire syllabi, other types of documentation.
Yeah, so there have been times when, let's say, dual trainee is taking 3 courses, that the grantee went ahead, like the syllabus for 3 courses. That's not necessary unless there is one of those courses and the book was purchased outside of the college and I need to see it was required for the course. But in general, we do not need the full syllabus for every course. So I was saying that that first example we had is 4 pages. That is wonderful. It makes everybody's life so much easier when it's just really short and really clear. Once in a while, we'll get invoices that are very large. And it's because of just the additional information that we don't need. Another thing that we don't need is if the books are being charged at the college, so they're charged there on the account, I see it on the invoice, I don't need an itemized receipt. So I don't need the itemized receipt with all the books. Again, I'm assuming the training provider and you are aware of the requirements and you are making sure everything is required. So I don't need those itemized receipts. I have a question on here. He drops out of a class after we pay the invoice. Do we still receive reimbursement? It's going to depend on when that trainee dropped the class and how the training provider is handling it. Sometimes a dual trainee will drop out and the training provider will refund them 50%. And that's fine. So then we're going to make sure we're only paying, though, for what actually is getting charged. Kind of rare for that to happen. That period is so narrow, that time period. And if you're really paying for it like way ahead of time, so let's say the class starts in a month, it's a really short series of courses, it starts in a month, we've paid for, you've paid for everything, I paid you for everything, they drop out and the training provider says, understandable, you're being refunded $1,000 for that series of courses, we need to make sure we get the money back from you. Honestly, in the last 4 years, that's probably happened twice. So it's very rare. But if they fully drop out of something and there's no charges, then nobody's paying for it because all the charges kind of just go away. And with dropping classes, I always say it is important to make sure you have transparent communication with your dual trainee. And really encourage them if they need to make a change to their schedule, that they're checking with you before they drop. No, sometimes they might not because there's, a deadline and they have to have some immediately. But they should at least minimum be following up with you afterwards. It shouldn't be a surprise. You shouldn't get like grades in December and find out they dropped 3 of the courses. It shouldn't be a surprise to you if they are dropping courses. So make sure you encourage them to be open about if they need to change something. And that can actually lead to really great dialogue about why they're withdrawing. Is it just they're going to take it at a different time, or are they struggling with childcare? Are they struggling to get to that course? Did they attend a few of the classes and really they're struggling with that type of how the instructor is presenting? So it'll open up a lot more dialogue if they come to you before they withdraw from a course. Any other questions about reimbursement? Or Dan, Kathleen, anything that you often hear from grantees that we could answer here?
Gosh, Jacqueline, sorry, nothing that I can think of. You've really, this has been really comprehensive. Thank you.
Great. Well, I do plan, you all have the resources that we showed today. I do plan to make sure they are on the website. So if you ever lose them or you have other staff members or staff changes, they can come back out to our website. And since I just do have a couple extra minutes, I am gonna share my screen once more. And I actually wanna pull up the website because we do have additional trainee opportunities. So here's the website, and this is the specific page for the dual training grant workshops training opportunities. We will be hosting a request for application workshop or multiple workshops. Usually we do more than one in that March-April timeframe for you. And then right now we just finished up the grant reimbursement. If we have an ask to do this again in spring, I'm happy to do it again in spring. It'll just kind of depend on what employers would like. Grant monitoring. If your grant award is $50,000 or more, we do need to make sure we do grant monitoring. I'll be following up one-on-one with grantees, but this would be a really great opportunity, November 23rd, to jump on for an hour. We're going to go through some of those expectations, responsibilities, duties, timelines of grant monitoring. Then in December, I mentioned we are going to do a work plan and budget update session. I don't have a specific date, but we will do that in December before the holidays. And then there are other training opportunities. So Minnesota Dual Training Pipeline, who's on the call with us today, they have amazing different types of workshops and seminars. So they've got industry forums. They have Pipeline 101. So really the basics. If you have people in your community that this would also work well for, send them over. They have speaker series. These are free of charge and they are phenomenal on different types of topics that are important to you. And then they have workforce community conversations that are actually geographically located throughout the state. Then we also do on here have apprenticeship events. So we know that apprenticeship is, different than dual training, but a dual training can be a gateway to apprenticeship. So if you are interested in that, please make sure you're checking with the apprenticeship team. And then lastly, Minnesota Goes to College. Minnesota Goes to College, we have staff at the Office of Higher Ed that is on this board. It is a board comprised of several different agencies, nonprofit groups, and stakeholders. And they have amazing training that has to do with the admissions process, the FAFSA, the DREAM Act, financial aid. So if you are a grantee that would like to better support your employees, even if they're not in dual training grant, but would like to better support them through the education process, this would be the place to jump in and go. And I know FAFSA and DREAM Act does have training that is coming up here. It's either this week or next week. So you just have to register once and they'll go ahead and send you all the information. Okay. If you have questions after this, follow up with me definitely, but we will go ahead and end this meeting. Thank you so much for joining me and walking through the reimbursement process. I hope you found it very beneficial today.
Thank you, Jacqueline.